Garten of BanBan is two words that don't exist with an of in between them. And it also happens to be a game that is taking the internet by storm, shaping up to be the next big thing on the indie horror scene. This game is blowing up, with millions of views across YouTube and many of the largest horror channels in the community doing playthroughs of it. However, unlike most other games in indie horror over the past few years, this game is blowing up for all the wrong reasons. A lot of the more critical members of this community have put the game on blast over the past few weeks, calling it a lazy, uninspired clone of other games in the genre like Poppy Playtime and Baldi's Basics, and criticizing its gameplay, graphics, and story. But is all that hate deserved? Yes! I'm gonna cut right to the chase here. This game sucks! Dude, you know what? I'm not touching this game's lore. This game doesn't even deserve to have anyone look at its lore with a serious eye. Let's just get into this garbage. The actual gameplay of the game starts in the same office area we saw at the beginning. A key card is required to get into the next room. After entering the room, you find that the button over the door is out of reach. This drone can be used to fly into buttons that you could have pressed yourself, but they had to find a way to make this game longer than 1 minute, so they came up with this dumb gimmick. Whatever. After you come into this big indoor play area, you are requested to find 6 eggs to feed this dumb-looking bird thing. Once you find the 6 eggs, you grab a random hammer from an even more randomly placed locker, and can finally make your way out of this piss-ugly playroom into the ball pit. Once you take a ski lift to the other side, because there's a ski lift in this game for some freaking reason, you come to another puzzle, this one requiring you to match colors to each of these characters. After that, you need to press this stupid button with your drone to get this wooden platform to slide out of the wall, so you can walk across it to escape. But wait, the evil spooky bird from earlier is chasing you all over the wooden platform, which is now moving for some reason. Once you get to the other side, you press a button and the bird just falls to its death. After that, you backtrack to the main hallway, go through the orange door at the end of the hall, and end up in this small room. One more button press with the drone, and you end up on a lift that descends down into the floor where you are attacked by a giant MS Paint drawing. Then the game ends. Yes, that is literally it. Now before I get into desecrating this game's corpse like everyone else online, I do want to be fair and briefly discuss what I did actually like about this mess of a game, because you know, I'm a nice guy, I'm a reasonable guy, I'm chill. That's a lie. I'm actually freaking evil. But I did think that some aspects of this game weren't totally abysmal. The main room the game takes place in, the playground area, is actually a decently creepy environment, and really reminds one of a liminal space, even though the room itself is still quite literally a cluster of pre-made assets. The sound design was also pretty decent. It was very cohesive and fit with what was going on in the game. And the physics mechanics for the chairs in the playroom were also pretty fun to mess around with. As well as the walking controls were surprisingly intuitive for a game of this quality, and didn't have the usual clunkiness and slow walking speed that a lot of games in this genre tend to suffer from. Okay, now that that's out of the way, this game is lazy. Like, really, really lazy. Every environment in this game looks like it had no effort put into it whatsoever. And as many people online have already pointed out, just about every asset in this game is bought from somewhere else. This in turn gives the game an incredible lack of cohesion, with a lot of models being more or less detailed than the others. On the topic of environments, the environments in the game lack any sort of real color palette or artistic direction, and feel incredibly barren with little to no set dressing, details, or intrigue. The layout of the map is supposed to be similar to that of a kindergarten, yet no part in the map looks anything like a kindergarten, aside from the plastic chairs and tables you do typically see younger kids using. Kindergartens are usually full of bright colors and rooms that look like actual school classrooms. Nothing in the map makes any sort of sense for that theme, or any sort of sense at all. The rooms and assets in the rooms are just kind of all stuck together based on what fits the gameplay. The hallways are gray and bland, with colored power doors that need key cards to unlock, and rooms that just seem to have no rhyme or reason to them whatsoever. And it's not wrongly constructed in a way that makes you feel unsettled or creeped out. It's just a map made from reused assets that has little to nothing to do with a kindergarten. The only models in the game that are original are the models of the 2 enemies, which look like absolute dog water, lacking any sort of detail or eye-catching character design, with ugly plasticky faces and boring silhouettes. Then there's the drone remote control, which is one of the most hideous works of 3D rendering I've ever laid eyes on, simply being a basic collage of geometric shapes, and the locks on the doors, which are also incredibly simplistic, untextured messes. The game as a whole is just so ugly. Even for an indie game, the graphics are something that you'd expect to see a decade ago. The colors clash horribly, the lighting is flat and uninteresting, and the textures are ugly, inconsistent, and poorly applied. Some of the models don't even have textures at all, like the lighting fixtures and door switches. Not a single thing in this game is pleasant to look at. It's a lazy, clumsily assembled mess of regurgitated assets and pitiful attempts at 3D environment design. And honestly, that's putting it lightly. And it would be one thing if this game somehow made up for its visual downsides with at least some sort of interesting gameplay. But this game has none of that. Garten of BanBan is, like most games similar to it, a walking simulator, with minimal puzzle and gameplay elements. And the puzzles in this game suck. Every task in this game is just fly your drone into a button, grab a keycard, press the button, and then repeat. Maybe save the egg puzzle, which is still very boring and really takes no effort to complete, only utilizing the drone one time. And the way the map is laid out, as small as it might be, is so confusing. You still end up with no idea where to go or what to do, especially considering how the game gives you no direction aside from this tutorial at the beginning. And really the only mechanic in the game is virtually pointless. The drone just ends up being more of a hassle than anything else. Instead of clicking a button and the door opens, you click a button and the drone flies into it, and then the door opens. The game would be pretty much the same if it wasn't there. The drone is clunky, annoying, and only serves to slow you down. On top of that, the enemy encounters make no sense. The encounter with the bird is the only part in the game where it's actually possible to die, and it's terribly designed. During that section of the game, above the ball pit, which has no balls, by the way, there's a button that you need to press to get back across. Once the button is pressed, that wooden moving platform I mentioned earlier moves out of the wall. But the button only becomes available when the bird gets to your side of the pit. This only serves a gameplay purpose and makes no sense from any other perspective. And the biggest issue here is that gameplay-wise, there really isn't even that much to address. This game is essentially nothing going on in the actual gameplay portion of it. It's just so infuriatingly bland and boring, and literally everything about it makes me want to slam a lead pipe down someone's throat. Now, probably the biggest complaint I've heard about this game is its unoriginality. And from everything I've seen, yeah, Garten of BanBan does not have an original bone in its body. Every aspect of it seems like it's been pulled from somewhere else. The environment of the game itself is very similar to Poppy Playtime, featuring childish bright colors and props. The twisted school environment for a game was done better years ago by Baldi's Basics. The main office area looks almost exactly like the one from Poppy Playtime. The death of the bird character in Garten of BanBan looks like a poor attempt at recreating the death of Huggy Wuggy in Poppy Playtime. I still can't say the name Huggy Wuggy without chuckling, I swear to god, it's so dumb. The very forced cryptic lore that all these games seem to have to shoehorn in these days so that theorists online, such as yours truly, will sell out and make videos on them was popularized by FNAF and absolutely butchered into a predictable formula by games like Poppy Playtime and Garten of BanBan. The general designs of the characters are clearly heavily borrowed from Poppy Playtime, with their relatively non-threatening designs, going for a more aesthetically creepy, cute look with bright appealing colors instead of something genuinely scary. And where I could at least say that Poppy Playtime had well-designed models and dynamic animations, BanBan's characters are amorphous, uncreative blobs of color with little to no interesting or defining traits meant to look as child-friendly as possible. Garten of BanBan's themes of child-friendly elements mixed with horror in a stealth puzzle game is almost completely ripped off from other big successes in the genre. This is truly the most original game since Block World 3D. But why am I telling you all this? I mean, you know the game sucks. You know it's an uninspired clone of Poppy Playtime. You've been on YouTube, you've been on Twitter. I bring these things up because I would like to ask a question. What if there's a good reason this game's quality is so abysmal? That's right, I'm going to be talking about the meta-commentary theory. Since first hearing about the steaming pile of compost and noticing design choices about it, I've had the theory that this game may actually be a giant troll. Since then, a lot of people online too have considered this as a possibility, and from my research, there is a lot more evidence for this being the case than most people actually seem to be aware of. Some choices in the game stick out quite a bit, like the speech bubble on the wall from BanBan saying, "Sharing is caring, your pancreas is mine," which seems to be an overly on-the-nose commentary about the juxtaposition of childish horror elements in games like these, or the text, "The end is near," which could be read as making a point about overly vague and cliche horror statements, or the Jumbo Josh Lounge Easter egg, which contains text phrased in a very sarcastic and tongue-in-cheek tone, seeming to mock the hidden, dark secret in blank establishment trope. Or the weird meme the developers posted on their Twitter insinuating that the reason that the game is getting so much hate is because it has a main menu? The list goes on. And looking a bit further, you could even ask yourself, why would any developer who has a genuine passion for his game make something this low effort? It's not even bad in the sense that the devs tried and the end result was bad. This game is made up of recycled assets, poorly thought out gameplay, and ugly character designs that look like they were drawn in MS Paint. We all wrote this off as the developers just being lazy. But this lack of effort would make a lot more sense if the game was a huge troll, something the developers didn't want to spend a ton of time on and just released to make their point. On top of that, looking into the past of the Euphoric brothers reveals even more about their intentions. Many other games in their back catalog seem to have been created in a very tongue-in-cheek manner. For example, a multiplayer game where you take on the role of a pizza ingredient, or a game about a zombie apocalypse that relates the zombies and the struggles of cured zombies to the struggles of Black Americans, which...
Can someone get this zombie dude out from here?
Hey, you're not green. You can't say the Z word.
Which I really hope is a joke, because if it isn't, yeah. And it gets weirder. How about Introvert Teenager Simulator, where you take on the role of a school Oh, no. Look, I can't really comment on this one considering the fact that I have nearly 250 hours on People Playground, but you get the idea. Or my personal favorite, the Poo-Poo Monster, which its Steam description reads, your truck breaks down in a small village in the middle of a desert, smeared by a horrifying creature. Smell the danger, hide for your life, fight the terrifying urban legend, the Poo-Poo Monster. I can't do this anymore! I can't! Ah! Looking at these other games, these developers seem to be known to play around with weird, edgy, and self-aware concepts like this in their games, so it would be no surprise to me at all if Garten of BanBan was a huge troll. However, there is some pretty compelling evidence to the contrary of this. Recently, the Euphoric brothers put out a series of devlogs and Q&As on their channel, and in these videos, they did sound incredibly genuine about their intentions with the game, telling their story of game development and their methodology for creating Garten of BanBan, yet seem to have no awareness about the game's criticism, or even acknowledging the obvious parallels between it and games like Poppy Playtime. This Q&A is extremely compelling, and does certainly lend one to think that these guys are just two oblivious game devs who made a bad ripoff of Poppy Playtime and Baldi's Basics that just blew up by accident. On top of that, I can see promising to make more chapters as a joke to parody how a lot of these games follow an episodic structure, but actually developing these chapters, which the Euphoric brothers seem to be doing, is a bit of a reach for a troll game meant to prove a point. But then again, considering the fact that people like Nikocado Avocado exist, and seeing how committed he is to selling his respective bit, you can never really know. Honestly, the worst part of all this is the fact that we don't actually know. The fact that this game has gotten the community so divided between people who want to take it seriously, people who hate it, and people who think that it's a 500 IQ meta commentary really does say a lot about the state of modern indie horror, and how overused and overplayed certain tropes have become in this genre, usually just because they generate the most traction with a child-friendly audience. At the end of the day, Garten of BanBan is stupid. It's a bad game that accidentally blew up, and we just shouldn't pay attention to it. As for whether it's a troll or not, I don't think it really matters. And I don't think we will ever get a good answer to that, although, based on the evidence I've seen, I highly doubt it. Now, I certainly wouldn't go as far as to say that Garten of BanBan is the death or the end of indie horror or mascot horror as a genre, but one thing's for sure. This and other games like it is certainly a bad sign. Alright, thanks for watching the video. Oh my god, I'm watching this back now as I'm editing, and I basically have like the exact same thoughts as Dags in his video. Why is it that every single time I try to make like some video essay and I think my thoughts are so original, I just end up like copying like Dags or Poster or someone? 2016 and 17 was like the Smike clone era. 2018 and 19 were like the Daco clone era. 2020 and 2021 were like the Super Horror Bro clone era. And now we've entered the Dags clone era. I need to make more original content. What am I doing? No wonder why I only have 1,000 subscribers. Oh, I'll see you next time. Subscribe to boost all that engagement and watch time and other stuff I pretend not to care about. Goodbye.